Well, good morning, fam. It is another episode of Unpublic for today, Tuesday, April 20th. This is episode 50. I can't believe that we have made it to 50 shows. Thank you for those of you who watch and come join me every morning. I appreciate you. And I hope to bring you a special message each day. So here's my special message today. I have a very, very hard task, which is to convince you that it is time for you to run for school board. It's not going to be an easy task for me to convince you of this. I know that there are going to be challenges with my case, but I want to make a case to you that you should run for school board, and you should do it now, should start doing it now this year. Good morning, Elaine and Sherry Lucas. I see others are popping in. Appreciate you for coming in, spending your morning with me. All right, so this is going to be hard case to make, but I feel like I'm up for it. I'm up for the challenge. Welcome, Jason B. Allen. Mize, you're here. Are you going to troll me today, brother? I don't know. Tanji, good morning. Good to see you all here. So before I start to try to make the case that you should run for school board, or even just to give some insights about you running for school board, I want to show you a quick video. And this isn't going to make my case at all, but it's something to watch. It takes 2 minutes.
Tonight, an intense battle for selecting Haven's next superintendent.
Raw emotions spilled over this evening. Parents are outraged over the final selection.
Yeah, it comes after days of protest. The target here, a controversial finalist for that job. Newsday's Mario Boone was there tonight for the fireworks. He joins us live outside the New Haven Board of Ed building. And Mario, what a scene it was there tonight.
Oh my goodness, that is putting it mildly, but imagine for a moment nearly a fight breaking out among grown-ups, school board members no less, and it all happened in front of a room full of children. This is New Haven Public Schools Board of Education. Relying on this woman. Erupting Monday into chaos. Moments after a 4-3 vote to hire Dr. Carol Burks as the next superintendent. Her controversial appointment exploded after parents said they felt ignored and silenced, and that 2 other finalists for the job were pushed aside.
We have 3 minutes, and this is what we stand for.
Board members Ed Joyner and Darnell Golson nearly came to blows after allegations of vote rigging and corruption.
We are hiring a superintendent from a school district that has consistently underperformed our own district. That's a fact.
Is it your position that Dr. Burks is not qualified for this job?
She's not qualified for this job.
This board asked for community and student involvement and is not listening to what they had to say.
Prior to the chaos, several dozen parents and students gave the board a mouthful. Most opposed hiring Burks.
The students have spoken, and they are not in support of Dr. Carol Burks, so I hope each and every board member can speak on that.
Now,
So there you go. That is not a video that makes it any easier for me to make my case that you should run for school board. I used that particular video out of thousands and thousands of school board videos that I could have pulled from incidents of major plans that school boards are doing, controversial plans, fights that they may have. I routinely watch school board meetings from other districts, especially now that more of them are online and you can watch them in real time. I just want to pop in sometimes and see what cities are deciding. How are they going about administrating their school district? So I will watch Seattle School Board. I will watch like random ones, you know, in the South. And I picked this one because there's so much going on. School board members who are not working well together, a controversial plan. One of the most major things that a school board does is to hire a superintendent, community strife, communities that may agree or disagree with some of the major decisions that you're making, and so many of these meetings that just blow up. I have been there. I have sat in that seat and watched that on many nights of my life. When I was on a school board from 2007 to 2011, I saw a lot of different aspects of the work. Some of it was quiet, study, reflective work. Some of it was fun and engaging because you got to speak with people and families and parents about their hopes and dreams and the things that they care most about. You really felt needed at times because people would bring you problems that you could solve. And as a problem solver, as somebody who likes to jump in and help others, it was really rewarding to know that you held a position where people who had problems, for instance, with special education services or something that was really deeply meaningful and impactful to them in their life, you could be a help for that. So, I wanted to show you something that I thought was kind of like the worst of the job first, so that we could get that out of the way, and then we could get on to the business of you running for school board. Now, I see some of you in the comments right now. Please drop me a comment right now if you have ever considered or if you are actively considered running for school board right now. So please drop that in the comments if you're thinking about it or if you have already thought about it. So here, let me start my case. Here's some reasons that I think maybe you should run, and I've got them written out. Wanted to think about this a little bit. The number one reason is that you truly believe in young people. You believe that they deserve a great education, and something in your soul doesn't sit right. There is something where you feel as though they're not getting it, and that you know that it could be better. You may see news reports in the news about your school district that are depressing. You may see some dysfunction like the one in the video that I just saw, and you really believe that that students deserve better in your city. When I decided to run, there was a story written by my friend, who's a friend now. She wasn't a friend at the time. She had written a story about the dysfunction on our local school board. I believe that it was called, I went to look for this today and I couldn't find it, but I believe that it was called We're All Bozos on This Board. And this was the most explosive article. Now, at the time, I'm a layperson. I know very little about the schools and how they're running. My kids weren't even in those schools at the time. I was working in social services and reading this story about how the school board was just like this board in the video. They had so many crazy things going on that I thought to myself, our kids in our city deserve better than this. They're not getting jobs. They're not living the best lives that they could live. They're not graduating with all they need to work and to do well in society. Something's got to change. And it was like when a split second after reading that story that I just felt like my commitment to young people finding work and finding lives that they found personally meaningful was that strong that I was going to run for school board. I didn't really think about anything else. I didn't know anything else about it. I just decided, listen, if you're going to call these guys bozos, then I for sure can run. Didn't know if I would win or not, but just thought it can't be any worse than the people who are there. So the next reason that I would give you is that you really want to make an impact, but you want to do it in an efficient way. So some of us sit around and we think about, things we would love to do for the kids of our city, want to start some big program or some big nonprofit, volunteer some of your time to something. Those things are all good, and I would say do them. But I would also say there are few opportunities like working on a school board that give you such a big lever to pull to affect so many lives. The local school board is where the policy is made. We could talk about education nationally all we want. We can talk about Common Core and what the federal government's going to do and even what the state government's going to do. But the real magic is at the local level. The real magic is in the school board, on the school board that governs your local schools. That's where the policies and the rules are made. That's where you hire either an effective or non-effective leader for your school district. If you really want to change the game for young people in your city or in your area, your district or your county, however your school district is set up, I can't think of a more efficient way to do it. With the amount of time that you'll put into a school board for the return on investment in terms of impact, I can't think of a better place to do it than the school board. The third reason I think that you should run is that you have something unique about you. You have a skill set that you're willing to share. And in many cases, school boards are hungry or starving for very specific skill sets. It could be that they're starving for somebody that has an organizer background, somebody who works with community, knows how to build community and community coalitions. It could be somebody who's a nonprofit executive. It could be somebody who brings like accounting skills, fiscal management skills, who can understand budgets and how budgets work. One real skill that I think every school board needs and many don't have is the skill of strategy. People who are really good at strategy, who understand culture and strategy, how to build culture and how to use strategy. I saw so many times when I was on a school board that we would be lost in an issue, and there would be a person who was either a consultant or somebody on loan from a company or somebody from another form of government, like the mayor's office or whatnot, who were just really good strategy people. And they would come in, they would cut through a bunch of crap really quickly and help us kind of see the light. They were like the people would help us get out of the fog. And I always appreciated that. Thought every school board should need that. You have a unique perspective that is not represented on the board. When I ran for school board, I ran as a conservative Christian in a city that is very, very, very liberal and progressive. I ran on a platform of safe, orderly, and academically rigorous schools. And I said that everywhere I went. I kept my message very simple about what I was attempting to do. I'm not saying you should have that unique of a perspective because, you know, you want to win and you want to get on the seat. But maybe the perspective is you have a very, for instance, not diverse board. Maybe you feel that LGBTQ students in your district or in your area are not represented by anyone on the board. And because of that reason, that there are not going to be adequate policies for that student population. Maybe your board does not have an ear at all for autism or for special needs students. And you have that as your specific, unique perspective that you can bring to the board. I think mine really was that I was the more reform-oriented person than anyone else that I think that I ran with at the time. We all believed in some form of reform, but I actually was more out front than others and brash about it and felt like it was missing from the board. So that was my unique perspective. Hopefully you can find yours. I just have two more reasons that you should run, and then I'm going to go into another pitch on you. But you know how, you know, the vanilla ice principle. Stop, collaborate, and listen. Collaborating and listening are skills that I didn't know were so important until I sat on a board. But once I saw how important they are and that if you could do them, I saw magic happen. I saw like the ability to cut through difference, to collaborate on really tough and major projects, and then the listening. Like, if you are a bad listener, don't join a school board, because you need to listen to people on the inside of the school district, to your superintendent, to your colleagues on the board, but most importantly, to a very diverse public who have very different things going on in their lives. So you're going to have to lead through situations where there are no easy answers, but the best thing you could possibly do is listen, 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 listen. And then the last reason, I know I'm running through these pretty quick, but the sixth reason I think you should run is that you see a problem and you see a solution. You have a vision for how things could be different, and you want to go and try and make it happen. Maybe you have something like an issue. Like one of my issues at the time was career and technical ed. I was really at a part of the social services system where I would see people graduate and come into the workforce and immediately get kind of tossed around. They weren't qualified to do things that would help them earn a living. And that for me was the thing I couldn't get out of my head. And I saw a vision for how the high schools, the community colleges, career and technical education programs, and the state workforce development program and the state welfare system could all work together. And I think I saw that in a way that no one else did. I could articulate it. I knew the actors and the players and whatnot. So it gave me something that that gave me something a little additional to talk about when it came time to running for election. Now I'm going to check my my messages here. I don't see anybody here who said that they are thinking about. Well, okay, let me back up. Tanji says, I've thought about it often. Thought about running, so that's good on you. I know that there's one or two other people here that I'm looking at right now that I know for a fact are thinking about it. So you're just being shy and you're not admitting that you would want to run. And I'm looking through. I don't see anybody else who says that they're thinking about running. So let me run through those again really quickly. Do you really believe that the young people in your city actually are deserving of better than what they're getting in education right now? If you answer that yes, I think that you should really consider running for school board. Do you really want to make an impact that's an outsized impact, bigger than what you might do in other venues like nonprofits or volunteering? Do you have skills that you think in your regular life, in your working life, your professional life, or your family life are really, really serving you and your family and people around you well, that you could bring to the school board? Do you have that unique perspective? Can you collaborate and listen? And are you good with some vision that isn't there, for breaking through with the board? So let's talk about how to run if you do want to run. And I hope that this doesn't sound like there's too much to do. This is a lot of like tasky things, I think, in the how to run that I just think are important, that I pulled, I'm one guy talking, but that I pulled aside that I think are really important for your campaign and for your election. But it's not as much as it sounds like. Once you get into these little pieces of information, I think it is not as much as it sounds like. So the very first thing is to soul search. The very first thing that I would say is know your why. Why are you running? If anybody stopped you cold and said, why you? You would have to have spent some time soul searching, thinking to yourself, why do I want to do this? What's driving me to do this? It shouldn't be for personal gain. It should not be because you want to be senator one day or because you want to be a city council member. Children are not a stepping stone. So I would hope that you would have good motives for wanting to become a school board member. I am deeply, deeply, deeply disrespectful of people who pursue a school board seat as a stepping stone to something else because they're ambitious, not because they have a specific vision for how public education should be better for students. So know your why, do your soul searching. Have a vision for what you want to do on the board and have a vision for what you want to accomplish. What, you should be able to say to yourself, if this is a 4-year term or 2-year term, I don't know what you have in your area, whichever one it is, you should be able to say to yourself, if I were to win, this is what I would hope to tackle. And this is what I would hope to accomplish. And you should know your why. The second most super important thing, if you're going to run for school board, is to do your homework. And your homework in this area is going to prepare you to win. Like the more homework you do, or the better your homework is on your run for school board, I think it ups your chances of winning. So the very first thing is, there's so many people in the public who don't know what the actual role of a school board member is, that you might end up having to just start there with people when you're asking them for help or support, just to quickly be able to educate them on the role of a school board. And this role of a school board member is not huge. First of all, individual school board members are nothing. It's the entire board that actually has the power. Number two, your biggest job is to hire, manage, and evaluate the superintendent. The superintendent runs schools. School board members don't. So knowing the role of the school board member is going to help you, number one, be very clear about what you can and can't do so that you don't make promises that you can't keep. Knowing the role of the school board member is also going to help you be a little bit of an expert when you encounter people who might be a little bit fuzzy on what the work actually is when you're asking them for support. There's a couple of just really pieces of homework that you have to do that are just germane to actually being in the election and winning. One is the election cycle. You have to know when your election cycle is. You have to know whether your board is appointed or elected. I believe it's the majority of boards that are elected and not appointed, but Totally different scenarios if you have an appointed board. So I'm sorry if you're listening to this and you have an appointed board, that's an entirely different animal than what I'm talking about here. You have to know the filing period, the eligibility criteria, and the rules around campaign finance, because you're going to have to take fairly good records, have very good records of who gives you money, what you spend it on, and how much you have left over. And there are going to be forms that you have to fill out and submit at different times in your race. And then also do your homework about the key facts of your district. So you need to know about the demographics, the budgets, the staffing, those things. You don't have to be experts in those things. So I don't want to scare you off. You don't have to do such a deep dive where you're able to say, 23% of the budget did this or that. No. You don't have to be an expert on all things. And as a matter of fact, I think that when you start running and you start campaigning, people are a little bit suspicious of folks who come across as if they know everything about the district. And it's okay in some cases to say, I'm still learning about such and such, or want to know more about, these things. As long as you're strong on something else, you're able to say, listen, about the bulk of the work, this is what I understand, but I'm still learning on some of these other areas. One good way to do your research is to attend school board meetings or to watch them now. So if you're thinking about a run, watch the job that other people are doing. Learn kind of the process of the meetings, how the meetings go down, what school board members seem to be more on top of the information and the data than others, and which ones seem like they struggle with that. It also helps you start learning the process of kind of just the rules of how things work in the meetings. That was one of the biggest learnings that I had when I first came onto the board, was like, man, do I need to read like Robert's Rules of Order? Do I need to I didn't. So I felt a little bit naked in the first few meetings, but luckily I had watched so many school board meetings and attended so many that it wasn't completely foreign to me. I kind of understood the flow, the general flow of things. When you attend those meetings, this is a piece of advice that I have for you. In addition to watching how everything else works, look for the parents that are seem the most together, like they've been around the longest, like they've bird dogged the district. Look for the people who in the community who have an issue that they've been pushing and who have dug in. I met so many super knowledgeable parents who had been watching the district for years, had attended lots of board meetings, people who had kids that went all the way through the schools, and they had been there all of those years watching and bird dogging what that school district was doing. They were invaluable. Those community members, parents, people with an issue, bird doggers, people who would watch the board, even those who had lots of complaints about the board, they were invaluable to my campaign to run for school board. They were also invaluable to my ongoing learning as a school board member, because I had people that I could go to and say, what do you know about such and such? Or do you remember the history about this issue? Or did the board talk about this at one point in the past or whatever? There were so many people who would say, yeah, let me look through some of my emails or my files. I'll send you something. And sure enough, in a couple of days, you would have the information. I would have the information that I needed from them. The other thing, so the last thing that I'll say about do your homework is to read the district's policies and make sure that you're focusing on the things that are the most important issues to you, to your public, your community. So for instance, when things came up in our district about discipline, I had really read through our discipline policies already. I had really kind of dug in on them. When I started on the board, I had a very different idea about discipline than I did when I left. I became a more educated person on it. So I had a lot of opinions about discipline, and I was kind of more of like a, tough guy on the discipline stuff. And, I used to say stuff like, suspensions should be at the exact same level as suspendable offenses, right? And that was my kind of rhetoric around, I believe that some kids should be suspended or whatnot. It was with digging into the policies and the data and actually listening to some of the people that were knowledgeable and most smart about the issue, that I was able to have breakthroughs on my thinking. I was able to say, to get past the opinions and the rhetoric and get to the point where it was about like, listen, I don't even care what I thought before or what I feel in my heart. The fact of the matter is I've looked at our policies, I'm knowledgeable about them, and I don't think they're right. And I think we should change some of them. So reading your district's policies on the most important issues to your community is going to make you really effective and helpful. So how are we doing yet so far? I just want to check in. Is anybody, are you going to run at all? I mean, are you just going to watch this and say, I thought about it once or I thought about it twice? Are you going to say like, listen, I'm ready for a challenge. I know the reasons why I should run because I have something to offer. I have an idea about the way our city could do better, our district can do better with our kids. I know it's going to be tough, but I'm always up for tough things and I'm up for challenges and I'm just going to do it. So is anybody really thinking about it? So what does Mama Toya say? I just got a job working with parents. Can I wait 3 months until I'm settled? Okay, listen. You could wait 3 months until you're settled. Yes, of course. You could wait until however you want, as long as in your mind you're already running, right? Like in your mind, like, if you decided today that you want to run, that doesn't mean that you're running in the very next cycle, but it does mean that, like, I'm gonna be one of those slow, stealthy people who's gonna start just poking around, watching the board, because in your mind you're already a candidate. You're already running. So yes, Mama Toya, you can wait 3 months to do it. So continuing on. So the first thing I said was do your soul searching about why you're doing it. Purify yourself. Understand why you would want to lead in such a kind of tough job, but super rewarding. Do your homework, which makes you at least moderately proficient in the things you need to know. You don't need to know everything, but just enough. And then the third thing I would say is get people, ask for help. So to tell you a little story, when I actually was reading through that article I told you about earlier, where I looked at it and I said, oh, this school board is super dysfunctional. I'm going to run for school board. And it was like lickety split after that I just started plotting out like what my next step was going to be. And one of my biggest next steps was I was going to go to the mayor and ask him for his support. I had met him before. I had known him in the context of the other work that I was doing through my social services work, my nonprofit work. And because I had seen him around and knew him or whatnot, I thought that I would go and ask for his support. It was lucky for me that he had these office hours. So I think it was once a month, maybe once a month or so, he would be at a coffee shop for like 2 or 3 hours. And as constituents, you could come and you can get like 15 minutes of his time and tell him, important things about the city or what you cared about. So I went and I used my 15 minutes to ask him for his support to run for school board. And because he had known a little bit about me and a little bit about what it was that I was like, what my talk track was, the things that I cared about, he was pretty open to it, but he wasn't a solid yes, because that's not how politics works. And he wanted to educate me quickly. Like, you could really win. I think you're bright. There's some things that, you can do for you, but you can never win if you don't understand the system. We have a convention. We're a one-party city. This is how that convention works. There's going to be a lot of other people coming for that same position that you're coming for, and you got to get some people around you. That was his first piece of advice was, do you have anybody around you, any named people, any folks around you who are supporting you or whatnot? Come back and see me is what he said once you have some of those people. And he named a few people that he thought would be good community members that would be like co-signers. So that was a good lesson for me, because that was one of the pieces of advice that I thought was the most important, because after that, I wasn't just on my own. I was looking for other people to connect with who could help me, but also what I wasn't expecting was that they were going to educate me in the process about the process. So get people, ask for help, find your tribe, find your supporters, and most important, find a campaign manager. I never would have known how important that was. My campaign manager worked with SEIU, was an SEIU person. They endorsed my campaign, and they ended up doing a lot of the legwork in my campaign, and I never would have won without them. That was 100% of my steam. a little interesting that that's the case when I get such a hard time from people who think that that my stance is on labor and organizing, labor organizers is negative, but clearly it hasn't always been that way. So then the last thing on how to run is to organize. So you have to develop your stump speech, your core message. What are you going to say that people are going to remember and say it over and over and over again? I'm not saying that mine was the most profound. It was just the way that I ordered my thinking. So safe, orderly, and academically rigorous schools was my thing. That was the only thing that I cared about. If a school was safe and it was orderly and it was rigorous, I felt like that was the winning combination. I came on to learn things later that I picked up along the way, but everywhere I went, I talked about those things. So if we talked about discipline, I talked about safety. You know, if we talked about schools, how schools run or whatnot, I would talk about order, like the schools that I would visit where you could hear a pin drop and where things were, they looked like kids were learning and things were going well, versus the schools where I walked in and it was just chaos. I didn't say this earlier under homework, but one thing that I did that was super important and came to help me out a lot was I developed a skill of school visits. I started visiting schools a lot. So I would talk to principals. They would let me come in and they would show me all around. And, you know, I would get a visual on how schools were running and operating. I'd look at the kids and see how happy they looked or not. So school visits became this like part of learning through doing. Not just sitting and reading static things on a page, but actually doing experiences where you would have to engage with like kids. Little story about that, quick story, is I loved visiting kindergartens. It was like the one grade of all the grades that kept me in the work, because I would see how much potential and how much just buoyancy there was in young people at that age. And there was magic. There was always magic in the kindergarten classrooms. And because I had started out thinking about high school and what happens after high school, going to kindergartens helped me see the bookend, the other side. And the two together just gave me this love for being an advocate, for being an activist, like seeing young people who are really just kind of like bright and happy and bouncy and, you know, all the stuff that all the magic that you think about in kindergarten helped me kind of like seal the deal for me. It sealed the deal because it put me in touch with a part of myself I hadn't really thought about. So after you develop your stump speech and you develop your core message, campaign planning. So all the things that it takes to plan a campaign. Are you going to have a website? How are people going to be able to donate to you? What resources are you going to be able to offer to people? All of those things. You don't have to do them all yourself, but you can get help with it. It's not the end of the world if you don't need some super glossy website. You can have just a normal website. They don't have to be very expensive. You can get it for $16 from Squarespace. Like all the stuff that I used to pay more for when I ran years ago, today is like super cheap. You can actually put an entire package together for your campaign with very little money and get going. So planning your campaign, who's going to help you? What roles can you fulfill? What roles can people help you fulfill? Do you have somebody who can be a treasurer, a campaign manager? And realize I'm talking about in the context of where I live. In where you live, many of these things will be a little bit different. They, you know, the way that the campaign cycle runs or how you run or who you get to help you might be different in your area, but I'm just telling you from what I know. And then, you know, the third thing underneath organizing is the biggest and most important one to me, which is be seen and be heard. I looked for every opportunity to, can I come and talk to your 10 people that meet for a coffee group? Can I come and talk to your book club? Can you host a living room meeting for me? There were people that did that. They would, you know, invite all their friends. They would put out the spread, the food and refreshments, and call all their friends who were parents who were going to be active voters together in their living room. And I would stand and deliver. We would have conversations. I would hear what was most important to them, and then I would deliver my core message to them also. But be seen, be heard, engage with journalists. So find your education reporters, make contact with them, let them know that you're available to talk about your campaign, that you have ideas, that you have critiques maybe of the district. Be seen, be heard. All right. So how are we doing so far, folks? I'm looking down here. I want to see if anybody, still there's nobody who's, I'm not getting anybody to like sign on for this. Sherry Lucas, I'm going to take notes, but are you going to run, Sherry? Toya Jackson says, I got a job working with parents. Oh, that was Toya who had said that earlier. I thought that was Mama Toya. I'm sorry, Toya Jackson, who said you got a job. And Tony Morris, good morning to you too, but are you going to run? Jason B. Allen, are you still here? Are you going to run? I know some of you are already so well positioned, not just to run, but win. You're already doing work that is education focused, that is youth focused. In some cases, you are in possession of research, and research has been the thing that you have contributed to the field. My God, I can't think of a better, more level-headed group of people to make it to the school board than those who have lived in the data and understand some of the things around pedagogy, teaching, learning. Man, that would be like a huge asset. I see a couple of you here are people that I know have worked with young people in activism work. I can also think of another better skill set to bring to the board, because getting young people and students and their parents actively involved in the process of governing schools or of creating the policies that they have to live by. I didn't see so much of that in the beginning. And I always felt like it was a missing part of the power play. The apparatus was that the very people who are being governed by the things that you are working on every day are not super involved in the process of making it happen. So that's all I had for how to run. I'm going to go on shortly here to how to lead, but I do want to back way up, and I should have said this at the beginning. It's just to say that the average school board member in the United States is a white male conservative Republican who has more money than the students in the district that he's overseeing. So if I were to like break down like a persona that is the main, this is across the country, like across the board on all the demographics, that is the average demographic of a school board member: white male, college educated, more affluent than his district, not affluent necessarily, but more affluent than his district, conservative Republican male. So when I said at the very beginning of this, do you bring something unique, a unique perspective? Right from the get-go, if I tell you that that's the main demographic of who is governing the educational apparatus of the United States. If you look at the main group of interest leaders, the people who work within the school systems, who are the school boards associations, the superintendents associations, the teachers, the various interest groups within education, those also may not be the exact same demographic as the school board, but many of those actually organizations are not as diverse as they should be. They're definitely not matching the students in the schools. So the need for people who bring something different to school boards is huge and abundant. Now, you may be living in a city where you look around and you say, well, you know, that's not, I mean, most of our school board is black or whatnot. Well, maybe the different thing that you might bring is there might be a little bit of groupthink there too, amongst that group. And wherever you are, there might be too much groupthink and kind of insular, culturally insular thinking going on that you can help break up. So I'm going to go into the home stretch here now about how to lead. So you decide that you're right for it. You decide you want to run. You decide to do your homework and you're organizing, finding your people, getting your campaign started. You're off to the races. You run, and let's say you win. That's awesome. But now you have to lead and you have to govern. There is so much that is going to come up if you are an engaged board member. There are so many different ways that people do board member service. There are people who are fairly lazy and don't really show up for much, but really love to throw the title around, but you know, they don't always do their homework. They kind of come unprepared to things. They make impassioned, kind of wild, weird speeches at times. And then they don't really know much of what's going on, but you know, hey, they got the role and you know, they're feeling themselves. You have some people who are very involved in the board and they execute well. They read up, they do their homework before meetings. They know what the important decisions are, and they're fairly good representatives. You have some over-engaged school board members too. You have school board members that come in and they think that they're like a petty superintendent. I saw this after I left. There were multiple petty superintendents that replaced my slate of board members that left. Was replaced by a slate of board members who came in and they were going to do everything different than when we did. They ruined systems that took months and months and months to put into place. They weirdly readjusted budgets. They turned over rules that didn't need to turn over. And then they started acting like they were little superintendents. Each of them wanted an office where they could have staff and they could start, spending their days in a couple of cases, because we had more than one person who followed after me who didn't have a day job. So they had all day long, they had all the time in the world be sitting in the district trying to micromanage the superintendent. Complete catastrophe. You don't want those kind of board members. So how to lead, from my perspective, this is just, again, one guy talking. I can't talk for everybody else, but the very first thing is focus. You can't be all things to all people as a school board member. You don't have to solve all the problems. You don't have to be a master of all trades. When you are a school board member, if you have a focus, if number one, you are basically proficient in the basics of what you need to do. You need to vote on things. You need to be able to read memos that come to you and understand what's being asked of you. And you need to be able to sometimes delve into complex issues, but then make a decision. Other than that, I had very good advice at the beginning of my term. Had a couple of people who said to me, Chris, pick one or two things that you really want to accomplish and go hard on those things, but don't be scattered. Don't be all over the map, because you'll be an ineffective board member. You won't get anything done for kids. So for me, opening an office within the district called the Office of New Schools, that would be a part of the district that would be like an R&D department that would create new schools, became my thing. It was like my one thing. I had several others. I was into CTE, career and technical education. I was definitely into special education. I had, a few pet issues, but the main thing that I was trying to get done was a structural thing. I wanted there to be a place within the district where the district thought through how to build new great schools. And we did that. We were able to accomplish that. And in the process of doing that, I sought out a lot of help from others to know what I was talking about. So number two, stay engaged with your community and your superintendent. I think the best way that you can do a good job is to always remember that you are the expression of the public on the public board, on the public body. So being engaged with the public, answering their calls, answering their emails, yes, setting some time aside to have one-on-ones or small group meetings with people to hear their stories and their concerns, and then to be able to articulate those back to them so that you got it right, and then to be able to talk to the superintendent on a regular basis. If you lose contact with the public or you lose contact with the superintendent, I think you're a person without a country. Why are you there? So stay engaged, and specifically with those two groups of people. There are others. I also was engaged with other political people within the city council, the mayor, the park board. And it was always looking for ways that maybe we could do more together. But the most important, I think, relationship is with the public who elected you, and with the superintendent who you monitor and manage as a group. So let's see, number three, continuously study. A curious school board member is a good school board member. Continuously study. So seek outside knowledge from local and national advisors. When I was on the board, I would tap into people, first of all, just in that position, because I was in that role, I had access to people that I didn't have before. So there were people that, would say things like, hey, I heard you say this one thing at your meeting. Can I send you some information on that? Now, the subtext of what they were saying is, you sounded kind of dumb, so I'm going to send you a few things and maybe you could be smart. I loved that, because here I was at that point, then now tapping into a person. I think people are like walking libraries. I'll give you a good example of that. Joe Nathan here locally in Minnesota is somebody who has for years has done a lot of work around charter schools and chartering of schools. He's got very strong opinions, but he also is not easy to pigeonhole and put into a box. He's also, an author, an educator, a PhD with years and years and years of scholarship in an office that has documents going back to like the 60s. So if you bring up a case about something, he can say to you, that sounds like the thing that happened in 76 or 78. Let me look for a couple of documents for you and I'll send them over to you. And I swear my Google Drive right now is full of so many documents that over the years, people like Joe, Mitch Pearlstein, and I could just keep going on with a lot of names of others and people that I was able to meet while I was on the board that they sent to me. And I was able to learn because I was curious. So I just kept learning. There's also a part of the district that that held all of the school board records in Minneapolis going back to the 20s. I want to say the 1910s or the 1920s. And I read through, in the course of 4 years, I read through most of all of the school board meeting notes going back to the early 1900s. I was a little bit dangerous once I was able to have that level of knowledge and insight. I was able to say things like, in 81, we did this desegregation thing, and this is how it went down, because I had read the school board meeting notes from 81 and 86 and 92. So be curious and keep learning, continuously learning. Seek those outside advisors, though. They're worth their weight in gold. Here's a big one for me. Show up to meetings prepared. And if you don't feel like the district, your superintendent are doing a good job of preparing you for meetings, it might be that they're not, and they might be doing it on purpose. So let me just be clear about this. There are times where your superintendent and your school district are playing you as a school board member. They are playing you. They know what they want to happen. So they feed you the information in a way that gets the outcome that they want from the board. So you are supposed to be managing and monitoring the superintendent, but sometimes you don't realize that superintendent or the board, or their staff are managing you into creating the thing that they want you to create and not paying attention to things they don't want you to pay attention to. So, so be prepared, dig in, have questions. If some things don't make sense, be not just curious, but be a little bit rigorous about your preparation. I'll give you one example that hit me early on. My very first board meeting, the superintendent handed the school board these big binders, and it was the budget. And it was up to us to pass the budget that night. And as we are walking up to the dais, they give us the budget folder. And I'm like, I am not going to vote on this. I was a problem child from the very, very beginning, very first board meeting. How the hell can we pass a budget that we never read or discussed? How would you think it's smart to give us the big binder and the budget the moment that we walk on the board for the very first time? It doesn't make any sense. So be willing to challenge those things, but do your homework. And realize that oftentimes there are going to be times that you're being played. And that's why outside advisors are really important to your success. I hope that this is not sounding like too negative, but it's the reality that I faced. I don't know what you will face for sure, because you're in a different area, but these are coming out of the realities that I faced. I will say the other thing about showing up prepared too. Let me make this last point. Unprepared board members make nights really long, and they make meetings suck really bad. So inattentive board members who ask really dumb questions because they didn't read the packet. We have a couple of school board members in the Twin Cities that are infamous for this, and they derail discussion all the time. And they say stuff like, well, I didn't get this information from, the district or whatever on this. And everybody on the board will say, what was in your board packet? You did get the information. You didn't read it. Those are people who shouldn't actually be on the board. Anyways, moving on. Remember children first always. So in everything you do, because you're going to be handed some really tough decisions to make, many of which have trade-offs. And if you're not always keeping in mind kids first, children first, the needs of children, you could possibly get lost in a wild labyrinth of other kind of dilemmas about policy and budgets and buildings and programs that have nothing to do with the question, how are the children? So I would just say, please, 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 if you're in this role, ask yourself that with every decision you make. Like, am I putting children first, or am I putting adults first? Or am I putting other factors first? Like, the things around buildings and where programs are located, all that stuff easily can get you into a situation where you're not thinking about kids. You're just thinking about business mechanics of a district. And that's not a good way to do the job. So here's the last one. This one's the most important one to me out of all the ones that I would say to you. Govern like you're not running for re-election. And let me just hammer this one home. If you are always thinking about your future as a politician or about your maintaining your seat, you will lose your ability to be strong on the things you need to be strong about, because you will make compromises because you want to survive politically. I did not want to survive politically. I was not a politician. I didn't care about being a politician or politics. I got in trouble a lot. I got in trouble often and a lot. And looking back on it, it's the best thing that ever happened to me, because my resolve as a take no prisoners advocate for children never fell victim to political aspirations. Well, I'll never rise up in the party if I make that decision. I had other political people call me and threaten my future, my career, if I didn't make decision A or make decision B. And oftentimes what they were asking for was not in the best interest of children. It definitely was not in the best interest of most marginalized children. So I know what it sounds like to pick up a phone and have an important political person with power, who is important in the party that runs the town that you live in, tell you that you'll never do anything politically in this town again if you don't make the decision that they want you to make. And I know what it sounds like for them to be doing that on behalf of the most privileged children, not the least privileged children. Once you stand in the face of that, once you have lost a job or two because these people come after you, once you have stood your ground on this, I swear to you, you come out the other side stronger, better, smarter, faster, more ready to go at it and stand your ground as an activist, as an advocate. That was my story. That doesn't have to be you. Maybe you are somebody who wants to think about the peace and you have other ways that you want to look at this. I would still say to you, don't compromise in a way because you want some political future. School board is, in my mind, I am again, I said this earlier today, I am disrespectful of people who see school board as just another political position. Like it's on the way to something else that's more important. There is nothing more important than having the ability to impact the lives of children for the rest of their lives, right? Like to get them a great education, to make sure that their schools are safe, orderly, and rigorous, schools that prepare them for high-wage, high-growth occupations, schools that set them up for success in life. There is no position above school board that is more important than that position in my mind. So it's not a good place to go if you think, I'll do this for a couple years and then I'll go do something else. And for the love of God, if thousands of people elect you to a school board, finish your term. There is nothing, I think, more insulting than somebody who proves that it was all about personal ambition by getting a school board seat and quickly starting to run for something else like state representative or city council or something else. That is disgusting. Don't do it. Kids are not your stepping stone. The school board is not a stepping stone. Arguably, in my mind, the school board is a more important government function than almost any other. Every other elected official washes their hands of children at some point. Well, Chris, you know what? We got to think about real estate. Well, Chris, we got to think about the business community. Well, Chris, we got to think about public safety, blah, blah, blah. School board is monofocused on the future of children, the preparation of children, the health, wellness, and safety of children. There is no public entity, and there is no role I can think of that's more important than that. All right, well, that's where I'm going to land, folks. I think you should run. To recap, I think you should run for school board. I think you should do it, number one, because you truly believe that our kids can do better, and that our schools can be better for the kids. I think you should run for school board because you want to make a real impact and you want to do it in the most efficient way possible. And I can't think of a more efficient way to make an impact than to be on the board that sets the policies and the rules that governs the lives, the educational and academic lives of children. You have skills that you are willing to share. There's something that you are good at that would actually be good for a board somewhere, and you want to share it. You have a unique perspective that not everybody on your existing board has. And if you were to bring that to the board, it would change a little bit of the thinking and actually make better outcomes for students. You have a gift for listening and for collaborating with others and for developing solutions through collaboration. And you want to bring that to the board. You're good at strategy. You understand how to get things done, how to see the signal through the noise, how to hear the signal through the noise and see the beacon of light through the fog, whatever metaphor you want to use. That's what you're good at. You're willing to soul search your motives. You're willing to do your homework to get the job. You're willing to find people, find your tribe who will help you to be your best, to help you be a good candidate, and then a good school board member when you win, and a good public servant. And you want to organize. You want to organize other people. So if this is you and you're ready to lead, I think you should run for school board. Now realize if you do this, contact me. My email address, it's not on the screen, is citizen@hey.com, and that's HEY.com. I'm always willing to talk to anybody whose prospective school board member wants to become one, or is just exploring it, just kind of figuring it out. So there you go, friends. I don't know if I did a good case or not, but I'm really, 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 this is part of my ministry, is to get everybody who's capable and willing to offer what they have to the governance of schools. I'm here for it. I'm all here for it. We can't all be teachers. We can't all be principals. We can't all be superintendents. Can't all work within the educational system, but we all can find ways to give. And being a school board member is one of the best ways that I can think to give. Hope this has worked for you. Thank you so much for joining me today on a Tuesday morning in the spring, when you could be doing anything else. That you were here to talk about education, or to hear about something that's important and germane to education, to me is a big deal. Wherever we can find common ground and come together and have dialogue about these things, I think we're doing good work.